EMP stands for electromagnetic pulse. It is a phenomenon that can be caused by natural occurrences like intense solar activity or by the detonation of a nuclear weapon high above the Earth outside of the atmosphere. It can also be created more locally by more targeted weapons, radio frequency weapons. And what it basically does is it has a very damaging effect on unprotected electronic and electrical gear. And if that goes down, particularly key pieces of our grid, known as transformers, it could have a truly catastrophic effect on the United States. Well, the worst case in the event of one or the other of the causes of an electromagnetic pulse effect, when there is no protection of the grid against it, you could lose not only the electrical system itself, but all of the infrastructures that rely on it: food, transportation, water, medical, telecommunications, finance. In other words, basically everything that makes a 21st century society like ours function. The best case is we've taken steps to try to harden the grid, as they call it, protect it against these sorts of effects. And if we are able to do that, the interruptions of service or the degradation of some of the key parts of our infrastructure would be both relatively minor and temporary. That's to be hoped for, but it won't happen by itself. We've got to take steps to harden the grid. I worked in the Pentagon on nuclear weapons policy a long time ago and became aware of this phenomenon then and have been worried about it ever since. And the more people have looked at it in the intervening years, the more they've confirmed that we have a real vulnerability. And ironically, we're at the point now of investing many billions of dollars in building what's called a smart grid that would be more efficient than the one we have. Unfortunately, if we don't take steps to make it more resilient, it's not only going to be not so smart, it's going to be dumber than the grid we have now. In fact, it will be even harder to ensure survives an EMP effect. Well, we're working with a number of other organizations, some of whom have been very active in trying to understand the science or describe the technical fixes or develop the technology that would make those fixes affordable, or are simply trying to help the American people understand the need to make the electrical grid more resilient. Our job, as I see it, is to see if we can't help those people who understand the threat of electromagnetic pulse more effective in working together and in getting their respective jobs done. I believe that we have no choice but to take the sorts of steps that will enable us to make our electrical grid more, if not completely, certainly more resilient against electromagnetic pulse effects. The good news is that it isn't a lot of money to do it. The bad news is we've got to raise awareness that it needs to be done and get people particularly in a position to make sure that legislative steps and executive branch actions and private sector initiatives are taken to try to ensure that we can survive as a nation an electromagnetic pulse event of a man-caused or a naturally occurring source.
And as the CSP, what are the biggest challenges that you face in creating awareness?
I think that there are so many distractions and so many problems, some of which seem much more imminent than something like this. What we've been, I think, able to say to folks is whether you are concerned about what the Iranians or the North Koreans or the Chinese or Russians or perhaps others who we know are working to acquire the means to inflict upon us a terrible electromagnetic pulse attack, we have to worry about the sun. And the sun is in a mode now that could cause at any moment this kind of effect and devastate our country. And therefore we have to move quickly on this, and I am reasonably confident we will.